Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today. I want to talk about the costs of war. The costs of war include caring for our veterans. We've had an estimate from Mr. Hurst yesterday that the cost to date in dollars for this war has been $25 billion, which I believe is well below the actual cost based on everything that I've heard, everything available to us in various kinds of settings, and I'm going to ask for a more accurate assessment. But we also know that about 400 service members have been wounded as a result of this war. When they retire, when they come home, their retirement pay will be docked dollar for dollar for every disability benefit dollar they receive. Secretary Hegseth, I'd like your commitment that you will support the Major Richard Starr Act that will eliminate this wounded warrior tax. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Tens of thousands of servicemen and women now are reduced in their retirement pay literally for every dollar of disability benefits they receive.
Well, I appreciate your focus on this issue, and I will tell you of the, you mentioned roughly 400 that have been injured. Thankfully, over 90% are returned to duty. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't have a residual challenge. And we're tracking that at point of injury to ensure that that is noted, even though they're returned to duty.
But what I'd like is your commitment that you will support the Major Richard Starr.
As I have said in the past to other organizations, we support the Richard Starr Act.
Thank you. On the issue of cost, Mr. Hurst, does that $25 billion estimate include all of the costs in terms of damage to our bases, the need to replace planes and munitions, and the costs of injuries to our servicemen and women?
Senator, so for the MilCon facilities replacement cost, that's probably the hardest thing to estimate right now because we don't know what our future posture is going to be or the future construction of those bases.
Well, you owe it to us. You're here to ask for appropriations.
Of course.
And I would like a more accurate estimate of what has been done that will require replacement and renovation, as well as the other costs. And I think $25 billion is probably less than half, maybe less than a quarter of the total cost of war, which is the reason why the supplemental request is much higher. So I think you owe it to the American people to give us the straight talk about what the costs have been. Mr. Secretary, I know you have characterized this war as an astonishing military success, to use your words yesterday. But the American people aren't buying it. And I know you feel the American people are seeing through the abstruse stuff that is thrown at them, but one point is irrefutable, which is America never succeeds in war unless the American people are behind it. And if what you're seeing as success now is winning, I would hate to see what losing looks like, because none of the shifting and contradictory objectives of the war so far have been achieved. Likewise, let me ask you, yesterday, the president said that Ukraine has been, quote, militarily defeated. I assume you don't agree with that assessment.
The negative nature in which you characterize the incredible and historic effort in Iran is part of the reason, Senator, why the American people view it the way they do. It's why I looked out at our press corps at the Pentagon and called them the Pharisees in the press. It's because they look for every problem.
Well, I'm asking you about
you look for
Ukraine.
every problem that exists,
Ukraine
and you
has been
miss
militarily defeated.
You miss the
I would
plank.
submit, based on my 9 trips to Ukraine, That is a false narrative that the president's
We are
buying
2
from
months
Vladimir
into a
Putin. I
historic
hope that
military success in Iran, and
will
you want to call it a
dispute it
defeat. And it's
because
defeatist Democrats
it
like
is
you
the
that
people
cloud
of
the mind of the
Ukraine
American
who are
people
fighting
and
for their
would otherwise
survival,
fully support
fight no
preventing
help
Iran from having
the
a nuclear weapon.
administration, and they are bravely fighting our fight. And that is the reason that I'm pursuing the Russian sanctions bill, which is bipartisan, along with Senator Graham, and why I hope we will recognize our obligation to release that $400 million.
Senator Richard Blumenthal walked into the hearing prepared for a fight. Across from him sat Pete Hegseth, already under pressure from multiple senators over questions about his qualifications, leadership history, and personal controversies. But when Blumenthal got his turn, the atmosphere in the room shifted completely. The exchange started calmly enough. Blumenthal thanked Hegseth for his military service and acknowledged the sacrifices made by service members and veterans. But then he quickly pivoted to the issue he wanted to focus on: financial management. Blumenthal reminded the room that the Pentagon controls hundreds of billions of dollars and oversees millions of personnel. He argued that the next Secretary of Defense needed not only military experience, but also proven executive leadership and financial discipline. Then he zeroed in on Hegseth's past leadership roles at two veterans organizations, Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. Holding up financial documents during the hearing, Blumenthal accused Hegseth of presiding over serious financial decline at both organizations. He pointed to tax filings and revenue losses, arguing that the numbers painted a troubling picture of mismanagement. According to Blumenthal, one organization lost millions during Hegseth's tenure, while another reportedly faced mounting debt and operational instability. Hegseth immediately pushed back. He insisted that the organizations had gone through restructuring periods and political battles that affected fundraising. He argued that the groups remained influential and successful in advocating for veterans despite financial pressures. Hegseth also claimed the criticism was part of a broader political effort to discredit him before confirmation, but Blumenthal was relentless. Rather than moving on, he began reading specific figures directly from the financial filings. He challenged Hegseth point by point, accusing him of avoiding direct answers. At one moment, Blumenthal corrected Hegseth's interpretation of the numbers in real time, creating one of the most uncomfortable moments of the hearing. The tension became obvious. Hegseth attempted to defend his record by arguing that the organizations expanded their visibility and influence during his leadership. He framed himself as a reformer willing to disrupt failing systems, but Blumenthal countered that visibility meant nothing if the finances collapsed underneath it. He argued that the Department of Defense could not afford leadership experiments or instability. The exchange, then, became even more personal. Blumenthal questioned whether Hegseth had the temperament and administrative experience necessary to manage an institution as massive and complex as the Pentagon. He emphasized that running the Defense Department is not the same as hosting television segments or leading advocacy campaigns. The implication was clear. Blumenthal believed Hegseth lacked the experience required for one of the most powerful positions in government. Hegseth responded by leaning into his outsider image. He argued that Washington insiders had failed repeatedly and that the military needed disruptive leadership. He claimed the Pentagon bureaucracy had become bloated, political, and disconnected from warfighters. According to Hegseth, his unconventional background was actually a strength, not a weakness. That answer triggered another sharp response from Blumenthal. The senator warned that the Defense Department is not a place for improvisation. He stressed that military leadership affects lives, national security, and global stability. Every financial decision, he argued, has consequences for troops and their families. At several points, the hearing room grew visibly tense as both men spoke over each other. Blumenthal repeatedly demanded direct answers, while Hegseth tried to broaden the discussion into attacks on Washington culture and political elites. The clash reflected a larger divide throughout the entire confirmation hearing. Democratic senators consistently focused on Hegseth's management record, past controversies, and qualifications. Republicans, meanwhile, largely portrayed him as a battle-tested veteran unfairly targeted by political opponents. What made the Blumenthal exchange stand out was how detailed and prosecutorial it felt. Rather than speaking in generalities, Blumenthal came armed with documents, statistics, and financial records. He treated the hearing almost like a courtroom cross-examination, trying to corner Hegseth into admitting failures in leadership and management. Meanwhile, Hegseth never backed down. Even under aggressive questioning, he maintained that he was the victim of coordinated political attacks and media smears. He repeatedly framed himself as someone willing to challenge establishment thinking inside the Pentagon. That defiant tone energized some supporters in the room while frustrating critics who wanted clearer answers. By the end of the exchange, neither side had moved. Blumenthal clearly remained unconvinced that Hegseth was qualified to lead the Defense Department. Hegseth, on the other hand, appeared determined to project strength and resilience under pressure. But politically, the moment mattered. Clips from the confrontation quickly spread online because it captured the broader drama surrounding Hegseth's nomination. Supporters saw a nominee refusing to bow to establishment pressure. Critics saw a candidate struggling to answer basic questions about leadership and accountability. And perhaps most importantly, the exchange exposed the central question hanging over the entire hearing. Was Pete Hegseth truly prepared to run one of the largest and most powerful institutions in the world? Or was he simply a political fighter stepping into a role far beyond his experience? That question lingered long after the hearing ended.
Thank you.
We've appropriated.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Really do appreciate your time to be with us. Before I begin some of my questions, I do want to start with something personal, and both to you, Secretary Hegseth, and to the chairman. I want to thank you both for the time that you take to recognize our fallen and those that have given, of course, during this administration, given their all. You have traveled to Dover and have been there to greet those families and to welcome home the fallen. I've been there with you, and Iowa has been hit in particular very hard. We lost 2 of our Iowa National Guardsmen from the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 34th Infantry Division. Secretary Hegseth, you know full well the 34th. But we also lost 6 members from the 103rd Sustainment Command Expeditionary based out of Des Moines, Iowa during this current conflict. And again, your presence there meant a lot to the families. It also meant a lot to me. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Secretary Hegseth, you and I have had many discussions over the course of many months now regarding general officer positions. And, you know, I believe that we were operating in good faith as we talked through a couple of those in particular, 2 Iowans, General Mingus and General Randy George. I was disappointed to see that their retirements were hastened over what I believed had been set out by you and the administration. So I just want to take the time to list out some of General Randy George's accomplishments as Army Chief of Staff. He pulled the Army out of its worst recruiting crisis since the Vietnam era, exceeding fiscal year 2024 recruiting goals and welcoming more than 61,000 new soldiers. Recruitment numbers that both you and the president talk a lot about, and rightfully so. He cut 5% of general officer positions, 12 positions that were deemed as non-essential in the Army, and he reduced the Army headquarters by 1,000 personnel. He co-authored the Army Transformation Initiative, which is a comprehensive response aligned with your directives, and he testified here in front of Congress and took a lot of heat defending that Army transformation. He was suddenly let go at the beginning of April 2026. General George's merits, which I firmly believe in, he enlisted at the age of 17. He is a West Point graduate. He had 4 combat deployments. He served in Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He had 38 years of honorable service. He achieved the greatest Army recruitment and modernization effort in a generation. So I want to thank him for his service. And I would like to enter into the record, Mr. Chair, the speeches that I did honoring General Randy A. George on his retirement and General James J. Mingus on his retirement as well.
Without objection, they'll be admitted.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk a little bit about the audit, Mr. Secretary. I saw the video that you posted this week calling on the department to pass a clean audit, and thank you for doing that. It's something that we talked about during your confirmation hearing. Fiscal responsibility at the department has been a priority of mine for a very long time, and I think it's time that we build on that momentum. It's extremely important. And that's why I'm pushing for my Receipts Act in this year's NDAA. It's focused on improving financial traceability and accountability across the department. And if you could talk a little bit more about the efforts in making sure that we are being much more accountable to our taxpayers. What is that effort going to entail? When will we see a clean audit?
As I said, Senator, thank you for your work on the audit. That has been a priority of our department from day one. And we put in place goals and benchmarks to get to FY28, get to 28 for a clean audit. The Joint Task Force audit, which we announced, was a reflection of even more capabilities we want to push forward and centralize authority to make sure it happens. Jay's been involved from the beginning. We also have a new IG who the new IG's focus, one of his focus points is precisely this, and he's prepared to work with us to ensure we reach it. So I think at every level and through this budget, it's a focus.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing a clean audit.